state and of our neighborhoods. And so what we did was we got in contact with County Clerk Michael Kearns, also the Western New York Law Center. Kate is here from the Western New York Law Center, County Clerk Michael Kearns. Also, we have Zaid B. Islam from the Fruit Belt Land Trust Organization. Also, we had a lot of good input from John Washington of Push Buffalo, who should be on his way down here. So this is going to be a strategy session, a solution, Zombie House solutions, and we wanted block clubs, business organizations, neighborhood organizations to be able to be equipped with the tools and the know-how to address the zombie house phenomenon that's going on, but to address it not as just a complaint or feeling like powerless, but address it in a proactive way where we can maybe partner with the county clerk's office, partner with the Fruit Belt Land Coalition, partner with Push Buffalo and any other organization that has resources in these areas to be able to, as stakeholders and block club organizations, take control and have a greater say-so in these properties and be able to turn our neighborhoods around and for the better for us. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes to recognize we have also Linda Menifee right now. She's in line. She's the president of the Maston Block Club Coalition. She's the president. And we also have Sister Ada Hopkins is on her way. She's running a little bit late. She's the secretary of that same block club, the Maston Block Club Coalition. Pardon me? She's the director. She's a director. And so she's on her way. We have Rogerline Williamson, who's the Northland Block Street president. Organization. Mama Charlene is here from the Winslow Block Club Association. Also, we have Samuel Herbert here, who's a longtime community activist. Also, Nate Boyd is in the back right here. He's a longtime community activist and has a great interest in the zombie house phenomena. Also, Josette Cotman is in the back. She's the president of the MLK Block Club Association. So we have some Block Club leadership that's here. We have Gina Davis from the Just Breathe Block Club Association. So let's give it up for all of our Block Club organizations. And you too? Winslow Block Club along with Mama Charlene. So we just, getting people involved and getting people to be active and actually participate is a feat sometimes. And so we want to just applaud you for coming out. And so I'd like to go ahead and give way and introduce our county clerk, our keynote speaker for this evening, County Clerk Michael Kearns. Let's receive him with a warm round of applause.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. Whoever ordered the food did an awesome job. I was really hungry, and to get that sub to give me some sustenance before we talk was great. The second thing is, I was saying to Sam, a long time ago, I know there's some youngsters in here, they probably won't believe it, but I had the opportunity to meet Jesse Owens. I did have that opportunity. I ran track, believe it or not. I used to be a little bit sleeker when I was younger, a little bit skinnier. I don't want to see any laughing or anything, but I ended up placing second in a competition and meeting with Jesse Owens, someone who became a great hero of mine, who unfortunately you don't hear much about, but won 4 gold medals, stood down Nazism at that time. And to me, in the 20th century, if he was not the greatest athlete, he was at least one of the greatest athletes, especially at that time when we were fighting Nazism and racism in our country. So Jesse Owens was always a hero of mine, always a big hero of mine. So I know you're not here to listen about my exploits as a young man. However, I do think it's important to understand what we're here to talk about. When I got into politics, I didn't get in the traditional way. I was a businessman, and I ran for office. I didn't have any support. I ran independently, and I ended up winning election. And I remember telling the story of why I got into office. And I remember my first house, the house I still live in, was an abandoned property. It was a HUD property, and it was a dilapidated property. And I worked with someone, and I thought to myself, if I can't do something in the community and try to save something, I wasn't an elected official at that time, we could do more. And I ended up still living in that property over 20 years. I put lots of money into that property, and I'm very proud of the neighborhood that I live in. And at that time, I was seeing in government, I didn't feel as though that people were paying attention to the neighborhoods. And I thought to myself, you know, I always wanted to be involved in government. Why can't I do something? And when you purchase a house or any type of property, you not only buy the house, you buy the neighborhood. So you're buying the neighborhood. And when I became a council member, I became someone who was very proactive. I was a South District council member. I was very proud of that. And I grew up in the city of Buffalo. I didn't go outside the city too often. My mother didn't drive. She didn't have a license, never had a license. My father drove, but he was a Buffalo fireman. So we did a lot of our stuff. We bought locally. We walked everywhere. We did that most people in an urban community, would do. When I ran for the New York State Assembly, there was an opportunity. It was really my first opportunity to see many of the first-ring suburbs. And something interesting happened. I saw in that some of the same problems that we were having in the city of Buffalo, in the urban core. I would knock on the door and the people would say, there's an abandoned property next to me. And I would say to myself, that's a really nice property. I would like to live there. I cannot believe that's an abandoned property. And luckily, I was able to win that election. I became a New York State Assembly member. And my first bill, I fought the speaker from the beginning. My first bill, I didn't have any staff. I didn't have any office. I went down and I wanted to do something, and we did something called the Good Neighbor Bill. And that's okay. And if you think about it, it was a very simple bill. And all I wanted to do to say is, if there was an abandoned property, if you were a good neighbor, what would be the first thing you would do? You would go to your neighbor and you would say, is everything okay? Your grass isn't cut. Maybe there's an awning that's down. Maybe there's a broken window. If I saw that at my neighbor, I would say, is everything okay? So in order to do that, I felt as though that the banks needed to be good neighbors in our community, and I filed that Good Neighbor Bill. Well, you would think that I, caused a stir and a commotion because I found out that throughout the state of New York that many other legislators were having the same problems that we were facing, whether it was in the suburbs or whether it was in the city. And I'll give you an example. The young lady to the left of me, Kate Lockhart, she has been working with me since I've been a New York State Assembly member, and we're collaborating on some issues now in the clerk's office, which are very important that we want to talk about. But there was a property in Clarence, New York on the Maples that was appraised over $1 million that was a zombie property that was left abandoned and vacant. Some of the most prominent people lived on this street, and this property was left for vacancy through the Bank of America. We worked with them on that property, and the common theme that we used to get from the banks were, we're working on it. We'll get to it. And to me, that was not good enough. I'm very proud to say, working with your Assemblywoman, Crystal Peoples-Stokes, and working with the West New York delegation, we were able to pass legislation. And even though my specific bills did not pass, they took the bills and they incorporated them into one bill, and I'm very proud of that. And we formed a great piece of legislation that is an excellent tool for the municipalities. Well, fast forward a few years, and working on this issue, there was an opening in the clerk's office, there was a vacancy, and I decided that I always loved being a local politician. I wanted to come back home from Albany. I learned a great deal. But one of the main issues I wanted to take on was the zombie property crisis. If I was going to make a difference in this community, we could do it through this opportunity. And one of the first things I was able to do as the clerk is something that is not being done anywhere else in the state of New York. We were able to share information. If a house is foreclosed upon, the lawsuit, the Liz Pennon begins in the Erie County Clerk's office. I knew that. And one of the things we wanted to do is to hold the banks accountable and responsible, and to work with municipalities and partners. There was never a database until we passed that legislation. Unfortunately, because I was such a pain in the butt, and I was always threatening to foil that information, meaning filing a Freedom of Information Act, the only people that could get access to the state information that the banks are reporting to are the chief executive officers and the state assembly member and the state senators. And as the county clerk, we are working on getting the information that the banks are supplying to the state of New York. But the thing that we don't know is, do we know if the banks are complying with the law? No one knows that. And one thing that we're doing is, working with our vendor, we were able to come up with a system, the alert system. In 1 week, I was on the job. They told me it can't be done. We cannot do it. And I said to the person, if you cannot get that done, we'll get someone else to get it done. Well, magically, we got it done. We got it done. And right now, we are tracking the data of who is filing the foreclosure, what banks are filing the foreclosures, and we're going to be releasing a 6-month report in partnership with the Western New York Law Center. In addition to that, many of the municipalities would wait until the foreclosure process has commenced, and it would go through the process. We are the only office in the state of New York that after 1 week, so on a Monday, the foreclosure is filed, the next Monday, I'm getting a letter out to the people who are being foreclosed upon, signed by Joe Kalman, the executive director of the Western New York Law Center, co-signed by my office, and we're letting them know that they have rights. They have rights under the law. And the first thing, if you can tell anyone, and I could say to you today, is the number one right is if someone is facing a foreclosure and the process has begun, in the old days, the banks would scare people out of their houses. Number one is you have a right, stay in the house. Stay in the home. And I had a bill in the New York State Assembly, and it was a very simple bill. Stay in your home bill. Your house is being foreclosed upon? Stay in your home. You have that right. You have the right under the law to stay in your home. And there is a Bill of Rights that we send out to you with that letter, so you know what your rights are from the beginning. 1 week, 7 days. That's unheard of. No one is doing that. I mean, they're finding out that they're being foreclosed upon, even if they're receiving letters in the mail. In many instances, because they're going through some type of situation, they do not open up those letters. And we get it. People are going through certain things at certain times. So what is the goal? So the goal is that we're trying to put a strategy together to make sure that vacant and abandoned properties, at least that are owned through the foreclosure process by the banks, that we have a good and positive resolution to that. And I think there is one way we can do that. And we have done that, and I've done that in the past, is number one, we have to hold the banks accountable and responsible. But you cannot hold them accountable and responsible if you don't have the information. You need the proper information. And that's one of the things that I've been able to do is, and I'm going to let Kate talk a little bit about it, our partner, that we are the only clerk's office that is sharing this data with the Western New York Law Center and with the public. And I think that's very important because after 1 year, after I'm in office for 1 year, I've been there 7 months, really the data from the DFS really isn't going to mean much anymore in Erie County, because guess what? We're going to have the real data. It's going to be important because we're going to find out what banks are reporting to the state. And it's important because if you want to hold the banks accountable through the Department of Financial Services. But really, we're going to try to work and find a problem. So now, the easy part in politics, and you always know this, politicians come and we talk a lot, he or she, we talk about a lot of things. It's easy to identify a problem, right? It's easy. Anyone, listen, I'm not a good-looking man. There's nothing much more I can do about it, okay? But I try my best, comb my hair, I shave once in a while, I do the best that I can. But what's the solution? What's the solution to the problem? And the solution to the problem is working with the municipalities, giving them the information, that they have the correct information quickly, so they can help. And we formed a program, the Alert Program, where we're meeting, and not only are we bringing them in to talk about these problems together, we're bringing together as many people as we can together, but we're trying to train them. And Kate from the West New York Law Center is training them, working with my office, so then it's not only that they're getting the information, they're training them. I mean, we got great partners, but then, what did we find out? We found out that some of the smaller municipalities who maybe don't have the staffing, they couldn't do it, they needed help. So one of the things that we did is we reached out, we're partnering, once again, historic, no other person is doing this. We're partnering with Columbia Law School out of New York City. That partnership has already been solidified. Kate and I went to New York, we met with them, and we're going to have the law students, we're doing a pilot program where the law students are going to do the work and the research for the municipalities. So we're not just saying, hey, here's the problem, municipalities. We're trying to help them and give them the solutions. I would say one of the most important things when you're dealing with these properties is to be proactive. And we want to be there to be as helpful as we can out of the clerk's office. We know that there's many different scenarios and there's different things that happen. It could not only be a bank vacancy, but it also could be something through surrogate's court, through a death in the family. We had a young lady out in West Seneca. We had a situation, and all she wanted was, she said, I can't, before I die, I want this property taken care of. And we got it taken care of we got it done, and how many months later did she die? She passed a couple months, 3 months later, and her husband said she died in peace because the property was taken care of. People have pride in their homes. If you think about it, you spend the most time of your life in your home. And so I do believe that the municipalities have a responsibility. And something that I always believe, my last act as a council member, which I'm very proud of, and it is the law, and I'm very proud of the Common Council and the mayor for supporting me on this, was the licensing of property managers. That is law right now. Property managers in the city of Buffalo need to be. It was like the Wild West out there for a long, long time. I'm very proud of that legislation. The second thing that I think that, the city of Buffalo, the Common Council can and should do is have a vacant and abandoned database. And I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know why they've held up on that, but that should have been done yesterday. I've been off the Common Council now for a number of years. That should have been done 5 years ago. I'm not criticizing anyone, but a vacant and abandoned database is something that I think is sorely needed and should be put into law in the city of Buffalo. That's my opinion. So with that, I know we want to answer a lot of questions, so I wanted to give you a little bit of background about who I am and where I come from and why I'm doing this. I'm a Democrat that runs on the Republican line. How crazy is that? I don't care about parties. I don't care about politics. I care about people. I love people. That's why I'm in this job. I want to help people. When I can help someone save their home, or we can help someone fix a problem, or we can help them, then that makes me happy. That makes me feel good. That's why I came in to become the Erie County Clerk. I don't vote on anything. I don't do any policy anymore. I'm just there to help you and to help the people. So with that, she does an excellent job. She's going to make me look really, really bad because she's an excellent, excellent speaker. But Kate, if you can come up and maybe talk a little bit about how we partner together and work together, and then we can answer some questions.
Sure.
Yes.
Real quick, Columbia law students that's going to help, are they getting college credit for that?
Yes, and Kate, you want to talk about that? Yep, they're getting college credit, and it's something that we're hopeful that can be replicated throughout the whole state. But we're going to take advantage of it. We're going to be first.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kate Lockhart. I'm a paralegal and data manager at the Western New York Law Center. I swear to you, it's way more exciting than it sounds. We are a not-for-profit law office. We mainly do foreclosure prevention. So if you know somebody, mortgage foreclosure, tax foreclosure, we provide free legal services and free legal representation for people who are facing foreclosure. I brought with a bunch of our literature, so please take all of it, pass it around. Like the county clerk mentioned, one of the issues we find is when people are facing difficult situations, they don't read their mail because they're dealing with whatever it is that caused them to fall behind it to begin with. So when that stressful situation is facing people, it's important for people in the community to know what resources are available so that they can educate the people that are in danger of losing their homes. So, free legal services. We also run a consumer debt clinic to help people who are facing credit card debt, medical debt, car repossessions, things of that nature. Even if you're to the point where your wages are being garnished, we can sometimes help people. We help them represent themselves in court, and we also are able to represent some people in court for them. Or if you simply just want to pull your credit report and look at what's on there and get some information, we also do that. So I have our flyer. We're at City Court once a week, and we're at the BFNC Hope Center once a week, and also in Lackawanna. Yes, we're Claro. We're run by, the Law Center runs it. And then I also brought with a flyer with the hotline to file complaints on zombie foreclosures. So if people want that sort of information. But we've been partnering with the county clerk prior to his clerkship when he was an assemblyman because Mickey has been willing to fight with us against the issue of vacant and abandoned properties and for homeowners to remain in their home. So like he said, staying in your home is probably the most important thing you could do in the foreclosure process. And then seek legal advice. Like I said, we have free legal services that it's really important that people take advantage of. Even if you can't stay in your home long term, there are sometimes things that we could do to help transition people out of their home. So maybe your issue was a medical issue and you were working and now you're on disability and you're making way less money. There are things that we could do like a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and the bank will sometimes give you an incentive payment to leave the house in good condition and to help you transition to new housing. So there are things that can be done even if you can't physically stay in a home anymore that can help you transition to your next phase of life. Something else I want to mention that people aren't always aware of with regard to tax foreclosures, while we're on the issue of foreclosures, if you lost your house to tax foreclosure and there was any surplus from that sale, meaning you owed the city of Buffalo $10,000 and they sold it for $30,000, that extra $20,000 is sitting in an account with the Erie County Comptroller. And if it's beyond 5 years, it goes to the state. But you can apply for those funds, and the Law Center will help you apply for those funds because there's a legal process that you have to go through to get surplus funds. So if you know somebody that lost a house and wants to check and see if there are any surplus funds, you can also have them call our tax foreclosure intake line, and we could possibly assist. So I wanted to give you just a little overview of that. But with regard to the vacant and abandoned property issue, one of the things that I think is the most helpful tool for communities is to, like Mickey said, be very proactive. I'll mention now, if you're a part of a block club and you want to take part in having conversations about vacant and abandoned properties, the Law Center runs a task force for the City of Buffalo. We meet monthly on the third Monday of every month, and if you want to give me your contact information, I can add you to our list. It's the Distressed Properties Task Force, and we meet right downtown once a month to deal with issues of vacant and abandoned properties and to talk about how we can better address them as a community. So I welcome anybody who is interested and maybe participates at a local block club that might want to be involved. Get me your information and I'll put you on the list. And we'd love to have you participate because it's really valuable to have the community present and a part of these conversations. And with regard to that, I know people laugh a lot when I tell them to call complaints into 311 when you're calling complaints in. You might not think you're seeing movement if you call in complaints to 311, but I will mention now that the City of Buffalo is looking at data from 311 calls and making decisions on how to spend money. So even if you don't think that that call does anything, making the call, identifying the problem, is determining where resources are being spent. So 311, even if it feels useless, is useful. And in addition, this hotline for vacant properties, that's through New York State's Department of Financial Services. You can also file complaints on vacant and abandoned properties there, but they have to be mortgage-involved properties for DFS to get involved. So anything that's an estate case or an out-of-town landlord, something of that nature where there's no mortgage involved, DFS is going to say they can't do anything, but that's when you would use 311 to call in complaints. And since I'm an advocate and not a politician, I can go a step further than what Mickey said, and I will say it is very important that the City of Buffalo get a vacant and abandoned property registry, and you should all be calling your council members to say that you think it's a valuable asset and that the city should be tracking who owns vacant and abandoned properties. And if there is a registry, the owner of that property is required to pay a fee for registering that property, but then also submit to the city what their plan is for that building long term. So we want to see that happen in Buffalo so that we're holding, especially out-of-town investors, accountable to the community that they're being involved in, whether they want to or not. Yes. Yeah, I would. I've heard from a couple different, a vacant and abandoned property registry is what you would like to see. And I've heard from a couple different people that behind the scenes people are talking about it, and it's something they've been looking at for years. So having community pressure to say we also want to see this would be, I think, a valuable asset to the fight to bring that to fruition. It's not in place as of yet, but a lot of places have had it for a very long time. Yep. It's a vacant and abandoned property registry. So you want to require that if someone owns a vacant home, they have to register it with the city and tell the city what their plan is for the property. And actually a lot of vacant and abandoned property registries come with higher fines if your intention is to leave the house vacant longer. Because whether landlords want to admit it or not, they're spending community resources by leaving these houses vacant and abandoned, whether that's police resources, fire resources, even just the morale of the neighborhood they're draining, and those are valuable assets, so they need to pay for that. Yeah. Right, yeah. It basically try to make there be a more incentive for them to do something with that property as opposed to sit on it. Exactly. Right, yeah. What we want to see is investors and owners in general have to make investment in their property or financial investment into the community if they're not going to move on a property. Yep.
So this advocate group that you're with,
Yes.
is this something that you can come
Yes.
And put this before who? Common council to pass this bill or what?
So if we want to go that direction, we could work on that. But like I said, there's already conversations happening in the background about how this would happen, as in what form the actual registry would do it. The city internally. So like the OSP and Bureau and those kinds of, permits and inspections, all the people that deal with vacant and abandoned properties will be a part of this conversation. And what I'm saying is, if the community is also saying, we know other cities have this, Syracuse has had it for years, why do our counterparts have a vacant and abandoned property registry, and why doesn't the city of Buffalo? Yep.
I was informed that the city of Buffalo sells property to itself, and they take the property and work out a game plan they have. Is that really happening, and what's the name of the organization that the city of Buffalo is selling it to?
So if you're referring to the city taking properties at auction, the city can take properties at auction through the land bank. The land bank has a super bid, and the city of Buffalo got a bill passed that allows them to transfer the super bid to them. So the first year that they had that, they took 93 parcels, something of that nature, vacant lots and properties. So, and then they're making plans for those properties, and I'm not privy to those plans. Yeah, in the back. Yep. To be, well, Benlick is the land bank. It's the Buffalo Niagara Land Improvement Corporation.
Your corporation, under that being a land bank, but still is a process by which they're recognized and provided the property. How do you do it?
Well, the land bank takes those properties at auction because they're given state power of the super bid. So there are land banks all across New York State that have the ability. Well, the city has Benlick. I have no idea how you would get on that list. Yeah.
It's an elected official. No, can you wait a minute? Just wait a minute. I'm trying to cut through Benlick to tell you how you get to Benlick. Benlick is a.
You got Benlick, you got you got two companies that the city will in fact take property from, over site control so that they can in fact develop these once abandoned properties. Is that not a valid question?
Well, I don't know how that process works. Like I said, I know that Benlick gets them through the auction because they have the super bid and they're the land bank.
Can I just first? I have to bring this point up about the super bid, Benlick, and who Benlick is. The head of Benlick is Brendan Mahan, who's the head of strategic planning of the city of Buffalo. It's a group between the city of Buffalo and the county. And what happens is they formulated this corporation in order to cite certain properties in the city that they thought would become valuable as the city increases its population as well as its development. So what they do on the super bid, they before the super bid even starts, they have a map of vacant properties, and they select certain vacant properties that are going to be super bid properties for them, that they can come along with a developer and develop the property, the possibility of developing it. And then what happens is, they put up a sign saying it's a super bid property, no one else can bid on it. That's how it goes. When they were formulating this particular type of idea, there were groups that came out against it and asked for community input. One of the problems that we encountered was there was not enough community input in the beginning. While Benlick has some flaws, it also has some good possibilities. One of the things that we are looking at with Benlick is taking over some of the Benlick properties ourselves and become steward and controllers of those properties, thereby developing Benlick properties. You have homes that have been built by Benlick in your district in the Cold Spring area. Most of Benlick properties are outside of the city, however, but there are key properties that the city does have. But most of those properties are outside the city of Buffalo proper. And what you have to do, because you got two things going on here. You got the individual problem and you got a community problem. And you have to know how to bring them both together and solve the problem. So one of the things you need to do, because you have your organizations, you need to start asking some key questions about who is the bank when it goes into a zombie property. Who are the banks? And who does, and who does the county clerk talk to? Not the bank manager, but who are the folks you need to talk to regarding the zombie properties? And the second question you need to ask yourself as a community, are you ready to absorb some of the zombie properties? And you can have that done, but you have to formulate a different type of group setting and corporations in order to do that. We can talk a lot, but there's some work that has to be done collectively and individually. See, that's what we have to get to. There's the individual and then there's the collective. And you have to decide how you're going to marry those two things together. We did it in the fruit belt. So it can happen anywhere. But it takes work, not conversation. It takes work and asking tough, hard questions. And you got to ask them the tough, hard questions so they got them here. That's it.
We gotta pull together.
Yeah.
Two questions.
Yeah.
One, what is the benefit of this Benlick organization? Because I'm looking at the benefit of the doubt it's supposed to be formed for a good reason. But it seems like it has its faults. And how is it legal that it can sell property, the city of Buffalo sell property to itself? And basically, it seems like they're robbing the community of ownership or the opportunity of ownership.
Well, Benlick will only take vacant properties, and the idea for any land bank is an entity that's a not-for-profit, that has a super bid, has the ability to go in and get a property that maybe is coming up in the auction over and over again because it's being bought by somebody who does not have the best of intentions, and maybe they're just not going to pay the taxes, rent it out, and then when it goes into auction again, somebody else will buy it. So the idea is to take those problem properties and rehab them and then get them into the hands of responsible owners. So different land banks do it different ways. Our local land bank has done rehabs, and they've also partnered with other organizations to get it done. And I think your point is, you know, get some properties through the land bank, possibly partner with them, because they do have the ability to take in properties from the auction. It could be a good resource.
They are public properties, they're not private properties. And zombies issues are mainly private properties.
Right.
And that's the difference. You have to separate what's public and what's private.
Well, weren't there properties sold to a developer on Jefferson that were part of this Benlick thing? Or is that true?
That I don't know.
Jefferson development,
Where? Farming?
Northampton area, wasn't there new development?
That's the general.
That I know with the, I don't know about that with the land bank.
But the one thing I think we can't lose track of, and I know we're talking about zombie properties here tonight, is that the number one thing that we're doing, and it hasn't been done, is good data drives good decisions. And we're going to be able to analyze data for the first 6 months from January to the end of June. And we're going to find out who are the banks that are foreclosing on people in our community. Is it the same banks? Are they local banks? Are they national banks? That's number one. Number two, where are these foreclosures? Where are these lawsuits? Where are these zombie properties? Where are they taking place? The third thing we're going to be able to find out, are the people leaving their properties? I mean, if the mail comes back, we're assuming that those people left. But, you know, I know as the gentleman said, we're trying to formulate a plan, we're trying to formulate a strategy, but you have to analyze and look at the data before you come up with the plan. Plan the work, work the plan. And I think that's what we're talking about, is coming up with solutions to find out how we can, whether it's working with Columbia Law School, look at the data. For me, I would like to hold the banks more accountable and responsible, and to let them know that this is real data. Like, they can't fudge this data. Like, this is data that the public will have access to. That's not being done. The data that is being sent to the state of New York by the banks, according to the legislation, you cannot get that data unless you're the chief executive officer of that community. So if there is a bank that is reporting information to the Department of Financial Services, which is an arm of the state government and that has the oversight of that you cannot get access to that data. Right now, I can't get access to that data. As the county clerk, I'm trying to get that access to that data, and we're going to work with the Erie County Legislature, hopefully, to get that. But right now, we can't get that data. So what you will have is, for your communities, and what we're looking to do is we're looking to form a task force. But that's not going to be, as a task force, as you said, a task force of talk. Is going to be a task force of action. And the reason why it will be a task force of action is nowhere else will you have the municipalities, you will have the community partnering, but you will have the actual information to hold the banks, at least for a zombie property, accountable and responsible. They cannot refute it. It's irrefutable. We will know that. We will be able to give you that information. So for me, I think, doing this and working with the West New York Law Center, the most important thing is we may not be to our end of our journey. We may not have finished the race, to use a Jesse Owens, term. But we have to begin, and we have to start working together as a community and finding out what the information is. Because as you said, you look at that abandoned property, and the first thing you want to know is, does the person live there? Is the bank start the foreclosure process? Have they begun the foreclosure process and they haven't finished it? Where is it in the process of the foreclosure process? There's so many things. The municipalities now, under the legislation, can fine banks $500 a day. So there's lots of tools in the toolbox, and I know you have a question, but I just wanted to get that out there that, if we target and start talking about specific properties that we're going to know about, that's a really, really good start. So I just wanted to jump in on that.
Are there any grants for improvements in our Massey area? Because Millbrook Rockland area has the bulk of it.
Right.